Hello happy people, we're going to do the text files now. So we're going to read from two different text files I've decided, and I've created one for marks.txt and payments. So marks is going to be a list of all the learners and what marks they had for the month, and then payments is a list of the learner ID numbers, learner IDs, their primary key IDs from the table, matching the table ID, and the money that they paid in. Now we cannot use a real value in here. There cannot be cents, unfortunately. It's very difficult. The operating system depends on your operating system if you have a full stop and so on. So we're not going to mess around with decimal point numbers, and we won't play with them with those decimal numbers. But we know we've got those two text files. Now in our program, and you saw the text file was the number, the ID of the learner, and the marks or the amount of money that was paid in, and we want to subtract it from the balance, because that balance in the learner table, account balance, is basically how much they owe, and we want to subtract it from them in the database. So we'll have a button for reading in the money and button for reading in the marks. So we'll put that somewhere else if people want to change. This is all in the edit learner tab sheet, because of course it's changing things. So I'll call this one BTN marks, and this one, so we'll add the marks to the learners as they go, and BTN payments, BTN payments. So marks and payments are what you're going to do, and that is how we'll work it. So we're going to read from text file. So we know we need a text file variable. We'll read it into an array, two arrays. You know why? Because you're reading from a hard drive, and to read from a hard drive and go to the hard drive again, it's basically, it's labor intensive for the processor and for your hard drive store system. So S line, we know we've got to read a string from the text file, and we'll have an array of IDs for the mark, for the we'll make it 1, 2, I don't know, depending on how many maximum learners you're going to have, of integer. This is reading the marks. Why is this button? I used a caption, not the name property. BTN, that's why you must have BTN marks. You must have the names of your buttons, and you need to be able to recognize them in your code. Okay, see there, I can see this is BTN marks, or I should make it even more descriptive than that. Never mind. And then ARR marks, parallel array, and this also happens to be integers, and we need our count for our number of, and making this local arrays. Okay, we don't need them to be global, because we're going to, from the array, we're going to read from the array, we're going to read from the text file into the array, and then from the array we're going to update the database. So let's put our if not file exists, which is very important, marks.txt, then begin and end, show message, and exit. Standard stuff. Marks file not found, something to that effect, and exit this procedure. We don't want to close the program. We don't need to close the program. Right, now we're going to go to our assign file statement. My file, text file variable assigned with marks.txt. Take note, I use small letters to save in typing. Then while not reset it, and then while not end of file. My file, you might have forgotten all of this. we do forget, so we need to refresh our memories all the time. Begin and end. We're going to read a line, read ln from my file into S line, and then we'll copy from all of that. So we'll say we're going to set our counter to count how many we are reading. We set it to 0. We'll increment it each time we read a line. Then we will go and say ARR marks. Oh wait, let's do the AR IDs, because it's the IDs that are first in that text file. Each line is an ID first, comma, and then the mark. Square brackets I count equals string to int. Remember, we're converting to an integer here. Copy from S line, starting at 1, pos of the comma in S line, -1, and close 2 brackets. I'll put that on a new line so you can see. It's a mouthful here. And then we're going to, so we've put that into the number into there. It could be a number 24, 25. You can't assume that it's going to be more than 1 digit. And then we will delete that from S line, and we'll be left with S line will be the marks, and then we can just say ARR marks square brackets I count equals S line. And that's it. We've got our array filled. So now we're going to go from one box to the other. We know that we have to go through every box of the array, and what we're going to do is look for the ID in the database. So we have a for loop and then a while loop. So nested loops for k equals 1, 2, I count. We've got our parallel arrays 1, 2, I count, do, begin and end. Now for each run of this loop, for each box of the array is going to go from 1 to I count, whatever I count is. It could be 3, it could be 4, it could be 20, it could be 40. We are going to go through each box and we are going to connect to the database. We have to connect to the database. So, well, we're going to use TBL learners. So let's go and put TBL learners dot first here. Maybe for the sake of, well, of course we have to go and do this with deng do. We have to use our data module, and then this is going to go right to the end here. End of using the data module. So we're going to go to the first row of the table, but let's connect to the table just to make sure it is dot active equals false. Let's make sure it is connected. I'm going to copy and paste that from somewhere else in my on show event of the tab sheet. There we go. And we might as well just do the set grid column widths too, eh? While we're about it, I suppose. On show event, set grid column widths. Yeah. And then we get to the first row. Now, question is, are we going to use the for loop first or the while loop? Well, I guess we're going to have to do this first. Wow, not TBL learners, but end of file, do, begin and end. And don't forget about the dot next. TBL learners dot next. We might have to get a Boolean flag in because it's going to be one at a time. Be found colon boolean, and each time we read from the for loop, we'll set our boolean flag to false. Where are we? Before we go through, wait, here we are, the for loop here. Before we go through the table, we'll set be found equal to false, just to save processor's energy. For processor begin and end. If TBL learners square brackets, now we're looking for the learner ID that is equal to what? ARIDs, box number K. ARIDs, box number K. So remember, it's going to be box number 1 to start off with, then begin and end. We are going to go and edit. We can use query now, or we can use just TBL learners. Okay, we'll do this dot edit, and then we say TBL learners. This is good enough to do it this way. Square brackets, what are we changing? We're changing the mark, so we're going to add to the marks. So AR marks will have the corresponding marks. So the field name for marks so far is that marks so far will be equal to the previous TBL learners marks so far. Add that to ARR marks square brackets K, because it's a parallel arrays, and we made them parallel by reading each line and then filling the arrays each time. And we also have to say TBL learners dot post, otherwise it's not going to work. And then we also have to say be found colon equals true. Now you must think of this as going through one box at a time of the two arrays, ARR marks and ARR IDs. So we're checking to see if the learner ID, each time we get AR ID and AR marks, AR ID box number 1 and AR marks box number 1. Then we go through, we get it, we've got it, we know that it's in the array. Then we go through the table and we see that AR ID box number 1, we see it's a matching learner ID. Then we're going to edit, we're going to add AR marks box number 1 to the mark so far of that learner, and then we post it, and we said be found equals true, which means this loop will stop, and the for loop will then move on to number 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and 6, and so on. And then we've actually done the job there, right there. So another good thing now is to refresh the table, because we've edited things inside the table. So we need to refresh and set the grid column widths. So that's that. Okay, that's that done. And guess what? All of this I'm going to copy and paste for the other button click event. The whole lot. There we go. Even the variables, because doing the marks and doing the payments are similar things. I'm making sure that all the code is actually right. So I've copy and paste everything from that button click into here. We're reading instead to ARR payments. So instead of AR marks, we'll read into an array called AR payments. So I'm going to highlight everything inside this button click the 2 arrows there, and then ARR payments is the array I'll use. Everything else I'll keep. And over here we just have to say AR payments, which is the payments.txt file. And then we have to say, yeah, payments, file not found. I'm just trying to help show you how you can do fast coding .txt. So we read from the text file, and then AR payments goes into the right one. But the only thing is that AR payments must be an array of real numbers, although integers will also work, but I'm just keeping it real, folks, keeping it real. Sorry, I know, very droll. Now let's move on. Okay, everything else is right, everything else is fine. Oh, but except for this, we want to subtract the payments, don't we? And this must be a different field, not marked so far. It must be the field account balance. Minus AR payments box number K. And there's it. Done. It's done. It's done. Let's go and see what happens if I run that code. Oops. Integer and string. AR marks. Oh, I forgot to convert string to int. S line. And that will happen also with the other button click event. String to float. String to float. S line. When you read from the text file, it's a string you have to convert. Okay, now what's this? Oh, I forgot to. Oh, but there's the with DMG. TBL learners dot. Oh, learner dot first. Silly me. TBL learner. Learner. Well, that's something that's easy to make a mistake about, hey? Oop. F12, fine. Has this one got this problem, or did I solve this one already? Yeah, I solved that one. Sometimes it's easy just to run the code and then you'll see where your mistakes are, and that's easy, quicker sometimes to fix it that way. Sometimes. Rightio, let's see if it works. Right, okay, I just got something missing there. Oh yes, end of using the data module. And by the way, for your PAT, you lose a lot of marks if you don't put comments everywhere on every single line. Right, let's go to edit learner. It's this one, B10 marks, and let's see, marks have increased. Payments, let's see this last one. Well, I don't know. Okay, now account balance. Okay, I spelled something wrong there. Run program reset. Account balance. That's all. Right, so you can see sometimes some of the people have got a negative balance because obviously I didn't put in, not all the people are there. So just know that that is the code that will work, and there we have that done. Now we've got some arrays. We haven't got sorting arrays here. We've got parallel arrays. It would be nice to have a sorting algorithm as well in your code. We've got object-oriented programming. We have one dynamic object, but a dynamic query. Dynamic querying is like update and set and insert and into, and using your query components to actually make hard drive changes. The update and set, the insert and into, and the delete from. We're not going to use insert and into. It can cause many errors. We've done update and set already using this. And now for the delete learner, when we go and delete a learner, we are going to use a query to delete a learner. We're very quick and easy. What we just want to check that I have got the on show event for filling up everything. Yes, there it is. Now, of course, we're going to need a combo box to go and choose. And the reason why I say use a combo box and go get the ID, the learner ID, is because there are people that have the same name. So we can't just delete on the name only. It has to go and look up for the learner ID itself. It's very important that you understand, because there are some people with the same names, and it's programmatically correct to do it this way. So this combo box is going to be CMB delete learner. We're going to choose one to delete. Before we deleted over here, we used a while loop and the ADO table component, okay? But in this case, we are going to use for delete learner here, when you delete, of course, we used the TBL component, but we must use the query to delete a learner. Now, when we delete a learner, it's not going to affect the course table at all, so we don't have to worry about that. When we added a learner, we had to look up the course ID, but deleting, we didn't have to do any worries. We didn't have any worries about that. So now we are going to fill this combo box up, and of course I'm going to copy and paste from my other event, on show event here, where we filled the combo box up already. And let's go to copy it now. I'm going to go to the on show event, and then I will change my combo box here, my combo box name. That's all. What is the combo box name? It is CMB delete learner. CMB delete learner. Done, just like that. Hold, highlighting everything, click on the sync edit mode, and then you can change a variable name very quickly. Now we've got the set grid column widths. We can put that over there just to make it, I don't know, just feel better with it there. Everything else is done nicely there, so let's double check. When we go to delete learner, we want to just choose a learner and delete. Now, of course, we are going to write the code to make it work properly. We have to look up the learner ID, then delete it via the learner ID. So we'll have to use an ADO table component as well as a query component. That we'll use the TBL learner as well as the query component. btn delete this learner. We don't have to delete the course, just the learner. This learner. Okay. So there's your button, and in the button we are obviously going to go get the name. sname colon string. I might have used sname hundreds of times, but don't worry about that. And inum we would have used 100 times too, but they are local variables, so you can use them, they're not global. Now we're going to go and delete a learner. We've got to first get the name. sname equals cmb delete learner dot text. I know you think, oh, this is so long-winded, but you have to go and find the actual learner ID number, because people's names could be the same. Always work with the primary key, otherwise you could have a serious problem. So oh wait, I want to go and use some code from somewhere else, because that's how I am. Here we go, we've got just there. Yeah. Delete learner. Okay, TBL learner dot first, and we've got to say with engdm do begin and end. We have to use that obviously, and just to make sure, end of using data module. Right, set up be found to false. While not in be found false, if learner's S name, then we get inum equals the learner ID, and that's all we need. Done. We did it already, so now all we have to do is a query. We can say query. What is the name of our query component? We go to this data module thing. It's called query eng. Vector main program query eng dot sql dot text colon equals delete from the learner table where learner ID equals, and join that to a string. And I'm going to put this on a new line so you can see it, plus int to string inum. Now you couldn't get anything easier than that. So there it is. That's the big long line of string. That's a long string that's going to go to SQL. You must remember to give a space over there. Delete from the learner table where this field equals inum, which we got there, which we declared over there as an integer. Right, so after that you have to do the following. You have to say query eng dot sql dot exec SQL. That's what you have to do. Sorry, my bad. And then I'm going to refresh the display in the database grid. So to do that, I'm copying and pasting what I have over here. There we go. And make sure it is DB grid 6, and it is it DB grid 6. Come on, show me. Okay, it's DB grid 6. So, right, let's run and see if it works. Now that was the easiest one that you've query ng, let's see, dot exec. There. Oh, I forgot the semicolon on the previous line. Delete a learner. Which shall we delete? Let's delete that one. Delete this learner. There, it's not there anymore. Yay. Finished. That was the easiest one ever. Right, now that was queries. Queries are very useful in the delete. When you're deleting, you have to have delete query, and you have to have TBL delete, and so on. Now, what we haven't got here is our dynamic objects again. Like dynamic objects is like displaying things on the form, writing code to actually display a button, writing code to display an edit box, or writing code to display a picture. You can do that. You can have a dynamic object anyway. We've got object-oriented programming here. We've got some arrays. We should get more advanced arrays. We also have already done a whole range of SQL code. I just want to go through them again. So let's go through some of this code here in SQL. Right, this first one. Right, we were selecting all of these fields from the learner where the count balance is greater than 20. So we want to display all the learners where, and we're ordering by learner name. Then this one over here, number 3. We're selecting the learner name and the marks of far from learner where the marks are in this set, if they happen to be in that set, if the marks are 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. So that is using set notation with the query. Then number 4, what have we done here? We've selected learner name. We're displaying the learner name from the learner table where the date started is a specific date. And you use the date, the hashtag for our dates. And you've got to put it in the year, month, and day format. The next one, number 5. Here we are selecting the learner name and the learner cell from the learner table where the learner name equals a specific name. Now you can see the 2 single inverted commas there. that is because it's a specific name itself. It's not a variable. So when you want to look for a specific string like that, you've got to put two separate inverted commas around the string. Then number 6, we have select learner name, learner cell from learner where learner name like. If you want to see all the names which have got a certain word in it, then you can put the percentage sign, which is like a wildcard, around it, and then around that the two single inverted commas. This is all good practice for when you write your final exams. There are lots of queries you have to know. Then in number 7, we're selecting this learner name from the learner table where the date is occurring on and between two ranges. So that is how you would do it: greater than and equal to, or less than equal, or if you want in between, not including the actual dates there, then you would leave out the equal signs. It's almost like maths, except that you're using hashtags and dates. Remember the year, month and day format with forward slashes in between. Number 8. So now we want to have only the courses. We want the cost from course, order by cost descending. Distinct. That distinct meaning, well, if you run this program, this is number 8. Let's have a look exactly what it shows us, and that also helps to explain that distinct. So we're going to go to reports, and it's number 8. So we want to see what the different costs are. So we're able to if there was duplicates 15,000, 15,000, 15,000, then we're only showing one of those costs. We don't want to have all of them displayed. If there's a whole lot of 1,000 value costs, we just want to see what are the ranges of the costs of the courses. We don't want to see every single one. We don't want to see 10,000 rand. So that's what distinct cost does. It'll only show the ones that, if they have duplicates, it'll leave out the duplicates. And that's order by from, so it's order from the, we're selecting the cost from the course and order by the actual cost value in descending order from highest to lowest. Distinct will give out the individual ones and not have any duplicates. So number 9, yeah, we're just selecting the name and the marks from 2 tables. Why? Because the learner name is in the learner table, the marks so far is in the learner table, but because we want to have half-year marks only, we have to use 2 tables, because learner name and marks so far are in the learner table, but half-year describing the course as being half-year, so it's from the course table. Therefore, we have to include the course table there in the from statement. And if we have 2 tables, that in the from statement we have to quote the join of the 2 tables like that. The join being this here, course ID in the course table equal to the course ID in the learner table, and that is how we say learner.course ID equals course.course ID. So if you're going to have 2 tables in your from statement, you must have this quoted. And this and half equals true is actually coming from the course table. That's why we had to have 2 tables. So we only wanted to have the marks so far of half-year courses. Right, so that's that one. And then number 10, right, so we're selecting the name and the account balance from the learner. Yes, it's only one table where the learner name is like a certain name that the user types in an edit box. Now we're using uppercase here because we don't want to get mixed up, and only we want to make sure that case sensitivity is not going to be a problem. So if the name is typed in small letters, we're going to upcase in the database, then we'll upcase it here with ucase, learner name, where it's like, in other words, the word that they type in the edit box is contained in the learner name. And we use quoted str, and then instead of the 2 single inverted commas, and then the variable name itself, and around the variable name we have these percentage signs, which are wildcards, which means if the person wrote JO over here in the edit box, if they've entered JO in the edit box, this edit box over here, I think it's EDT name, yeah, this edit box here, so we can put that there. If they wrote EDT JO there, then we're going to look for all names that contain the letters JO together, And that is what this code is doing. And it converts the JO to uppercase so that we can compare apples with apples. Uppercase UCase is also converting the actual learner name field in the table to uppercase. And that like only gets used with these wildcards. If you're using wildcards, you must not put equal there. It must only be like. Okay, next one. We are, oops, I don't know which one that's button 10. Okay, button 11. Okay, select learner name from learner where learner name like. So there's another like. Take note we're using wildcards and any names that contain the words VAN. It's very similar to what we did previously. And we're using the two single inverted commas because van is not a variable. We use quoted str with variables. Like the previous option was a variable name there that we're looking for. The user typed in something, we put it into a variable, we want to go and send it to access. So then we have to use quoted str, which is going to put those two single inverted commas around the string. But on top of that, we're also going to put wildcards next to the front and the back of the string, and we can use like, because we're using wildcards. So now that's 11, we're done. Okay, now 12. Select learner name, format, account balance, currency as account balance. So we want to display the account balance of every learner, their name and the account balance, but you got to display it as currency. So you have to use format and then account balance, comma, and then in currency with a double inverted comma, as, and then you also have to have an as. So as soon as you use format, then you must rename your field. I can maybe make it even better. Account balance. The display will be that, account balance. So that's just displaying every single account balance from all the learners. I'll run the code and we'll click on the button. So we're going to reports. It's button 12. So there it is. Can you see it's now renamed as account 2 words. Now I have to use square brackets, and it's also formatted nicely in currency using this format feature. And as soon as you format a number or anything, then you must use as, in other words, to display it as a proper heading to the column. Right, number 13. So we are displaying the description, the cost, and here's a format again where we want to make this as fixed decimal points, cost plus 10%. Now what will that look like? And it's going to be displayed as increased cost. Now fixed means we're not going to format it to currency, but how many decimal places will it be? Let's have a look. I'm going to click on button 13. Increased cost. It will still give it 2 decimal places. That's what it does. And it changes the field, and basically what it's doing is calculating, it's adding 10% to the cost already there. Now of course it should be currency, not so, because the cost is money. So let's change it to currency. I can't remember which button it is. Oh, it's that one. There we go. Increased cost. So the cost is going up there. From the course. Right. It's adding 10% to the cost. Cost plus cost. Remember, you do your calculations of your fields inside the select part of your query. So we've got cost and then format cost. What does that actually look like? I think let's have a look what it actually does look like. I think that's 13, is it? Yeah, so the original cost and then the increased cost. So the cost, and then they calculate, and that's what it is now. If I click that button again, well, it's just displaying. It's not changing the cost. It's just displaying what it could be. Remember, these are not hard drive changes. Select statements do not make hard drive changes. It's only displaying an increased cost, what it will look like. So it hasn't actually made a change, it's just displaying the cost with 10% added. And after that, the user can decide to change that. We can write code to actually change it, which I will write code for that in a minute. Okay, now 14, we have already made, we already did do that, but we'll do it again. So select round, cost, and we're rounding to 2 decimal places here as new from course. New, okay. So what we're doing is we're dividing the cost by 22 and rounding it to 2 decimal places, and that's in button number 14. Just showing you the use of round basically. As you can see, it's rounding to 2 decimal places there, and it's only showing one field. So round works like that, and you decide if you want to just round to 1 or 2 or 0 decimal places even. So this is revising how to use round. Then we have 15, selecting the learner name, the date started from the learner, where the year equals S year. Now what is S year? A year entered into the edit box. Well, you can enter any number in that year in this edit box, and it will come as a string in the edit box, and you can then go and compare that with the year of the date started. Year is going to take out the year from date started as an integer, but remember, when we send a string to Access, Access sees it as an integer. Unless you use quoted str, then Access sees it as a string. But all integers are sent to Access as a string. But strings are sent to Access with 2 single inverted commas or quoted str. This year is a function from SQL that will take out the year from any date. You can also have month or day. Now which one was that? That was 15. 16. Right, here we are with counting. Now count is a function that's used in your select statements, as with anything, as with adding and subtracting numbers or multiplying anything. Any mathematical calculations, you just put them in select. You're not making hard drive changes, just displaying what it looks like. So if you want to count the learners whose account balance equals 0, so we say select count star, in other words counting all the rows from learner where account balance equals 0. It's going to give us one number as number of learners. The field will look like number of learners, the display. So I think that was number 17, I'm not sure. No, it wasn't number 17. Obviously it was number 17, it's not working, is it? It was number 16. Run, program, reset, number 16. Let's see, let's hope it works. Number 16. There it is. There's no learners with account balance of 0. Maybe we can make it as account balance greater than 0. Number 16. 2 learners have a balance greater than 0. In other words, amount owing, basically. Right, now we're going to go on to the next one, which obviously wasn't working, so we're going to see why. Oh, max mark so far from learner. Interesting. Max is an aggregate function. We're going to see those aggregate functions are tricky. No default value. Oh, you know why? Because mark so far is not spelled correctly. There's only one S. So let's try it again. Number 17. Here it is. Aggregate function. In other words, goes and looks to find the highest one. Oh no, yeah, the highest one, and displays it. And you can only just display one thing unless you're using group by. So max, average, min, can be used with group by. Count can also be used with group by. And here's min, mark so far, also going to be the same problem. Spelling, it's the same thing, it'll just give the lowest mark. Average, mark so far, same thing. That's number 19. Average mark, group, aggregate function they call them. Then let's have a look what we got in number 20. So we want the total cost. I call that total cost, and total, I'll just call it total, should be more descriptive, I guess. Sum of the cost from the course. That's 20, total, there it is, total of all the costs. And then 21, select max, highest cost. But we already did that, didn't we? Never mind. Doing it again. Oh no, that was mark so far, wasn't it, that we did? We did mark so far as the highest cost. Right, so that is how you use those functions. Now let's see what other buttons we have here. Button 22. So here we have a group by statement. So let's run it and see what it displays first, and then we can explain it afterwards. Right, so yeah, we want the total cost for all half year and full year courses. So we're adding up the costs of all half year courses and they're adding up the costs of all full year courses, and so far there we have those two numbers. Looks like half year courses cost more than full year courses, don't they? But how did we do that? Well, we used an aggregate function and group by. So we want to determine between, we want to differentiate between half year and full year, so we use the half year field. We're grouping by half year, so we're going to sum up the cost according to what half year is. Whether it's true, we'll sum up all the cost for half year, and if it's false, we'll sum up all the cost as well. And when you see the field, you'll see the half year field will display true and false. So the true, if it's true, they sum the cost there. If it's false, they sum the cost. And that is how this group by works. So what you have to do is, when you use group by, you have to have the field that you are going to refer to, the sum, an aggregate function there, use an as so that it looks pretty, and then which table is it all coming from? From the course table in this case, and you use group by because we're grouping by whatever half year is. If it's true, we're summing up the cost, and if it's false, we're summing up the cost differently. So the group by must be by that other field, not the sum of the cost. So you can only use group by with sum or average or count or min or max. Then you use group by if you're going to have two fields here. So far you've seen that we've only had one field when we used max, only one field when we used sum, only one field when we used min and max and so on, an average. But now we're using two fields, and then you have to use group by. If you're going to use two fields with either sum or min or max or average, you have to use group by that other field. And of course, don't forget about the course, the table that you're coming from, and then the as, in other words, to show a pretty heading. Then the last button, here's a very big, difficult one. So we want to display, let's go and see what it looks like. It's number 23. So what are we doing? We want the number of participants for each subject. If you want to add up the number of participants, so we're going to sum the number of participants, well, sum, well, actually no, count. Let's count them. We're going to count how many there are in each subject. So we have to deal with both tables, because counting the number of learners, course IDs, comes from the learner table, whereas we want to display the description of the subject, and that comes from the course table. So we know we got an aggregate function count, just like max and min and sum and average. Those are aggregate functions. But if we're displaying two things using aggregate functions, we're going to count and display something, or we're going to sum up something and display something else, then we have to use group by. Over here, group by the second field, the first field, or the other field that's not the aggregate field. But in this case, we've got to display two things. We want to display the description and the number of learners for that particular course. And the problem is that there's two different tables, so we use from, in the from statement, the course and the learner table. And in the where statement, we have to put a where statement where we are quoting the join between the table, which I remember I told you about, that we're quoting course.course_id equals learner.course_id. So we have to put that in the where statement, in the where part. Then we group by description, because we cannot have two things, cannot have an aggregate function next to another table name. So therefore we're grouping by that other table, column name, other column name. And over here, everything we want to order the numbers, order by count, learner, course ID. So we want them in order from lowest to highest. Let's see if it is ordering from lowest to highest. So that is an important, a must. You must have, yes, it's the lowest to highest, so you must have one of these complex function queries in your PAT. Now, apart from dynamic objects, making a picture, go on, this is everything that we have, that I can tell you about PAT so far. You can make a dynamic picture come up when, you know, something happens. So in other words, if I want to do that, I will have to have a picture file somewhere. Let's go and see if I can find a picture file anywhere. Wait, there's not a picture. Let's just make something come up here, a panel. So if I want to put a panel that comes up, if I no, do I want the panel to come up? No, I don't want a panel. Where shall I put my dynamic object? We did do it earlier, but I want to just do it again. Let's say with reports. Now, I haven't got this rich edit there, but let's say when I click button 2, let's say when I click button 2, I want a panel to come up here. So I'm going to go and make a global variable here of type T panel. So I'll call it PNL new colon T panel. Belongs to the group, to the class T panel. Okay, we know that T panel is one of the components of the form, because we have got panels on here already, probably, I'm sure. And you can only do it if you've really got like a panel there or something. So you make sure there is a panel or the item that you want to create. There's T panel. So you must know, so that the compiler knows to use that library. So over here in button 2, if I want a panel to be created, then I would do that. I would say, what did I call the panel name? I can't even remember. Jeepers. PNL new. Okay, in button 2, PNL new colon equals T panel dot create. Looks like something you know. Ah, I'm sure it does. And it's going to be created on form engineering, and I'm going to make the with PNL new do begin. I'm going to call the, I keep forgetting, what is the parent? Yeah, parent colon equals, I'm going to call, what tab sheet is this? TBS reports. TBS reports. I hope it works. Color. I don't know if color is going to work because sometimes it doesn't. We have to have the top colon equals the number and the left property so that it's positioned in the correct place, and the height and the width. So we have to get those numbers right, and the only way to do that is to actually go and put a panel on there and go and read the numbers. So what do we have here? We have size 89 by 57, and we have 260 and 240, 264 and 240, 89, 57. I'm guessing 89 is the width. Oops, how silly I am. I'll get back to that button. 89 and 54. 89 would be the width, and 54 is the height. And I saw a 264 there, and also we have 240. I'm guessing 240 is the width. Now let's see if this is going to work when I click the button. Okay, there's a back panel. You see that? The panel's there. Okay, the other one is still there too, but I mean, I think I'll make the top 240. I think it was a little bit on the low side there. Never mind. What we're going to do now is, like, let's say caption colon equals hello. You can also change the font of the caption if you want. Everything that's to do, you know, the font size and the font color and whatever. So just remember that getting a panel, you know, and then you change the font dot size, font dot size, maybe 20, and font dot color. Unfortunately, I don't think the color is actually going to CL red, and maybe color will work. I don't know. CL black, I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, that's the end of that. I'm not going to do any more than that. Just remember, you have to have arrays and text files and OOP and all that nice stuff. So there it is. The actual color didn't really work, but don't worry about it. Then they must have some dynamic objects like I've just done now, and complex coding, and some more arrays, searching, sorting arrays, searching in arrays and sorting arrays, and but basically this is, as I've done it now, this is a good pat. So, and don't forget your documentation. Your phase 1 takes a long time, so be prepared and do that in time. And I'll see you at school.